everyone, welcome to Culture Clash, East meets West. My name's Marianne.
And I'm Jessica, and we are your international sisters. And how do you say sister in Korean?
It's 언니, so we are your global 언니es.
Yes. So today's topic is going to be about personality differences between the East and the West, or Korea and America, UK.
So one of the first things I've noticed during traveling or studying and living is that Koreans tend to be a bit more introverted and a little bit more reserved and passive. In the UK, similar to the Koreans, but in America, whenever I travel to the US, I haven't traveled to many states in the US, but Americans seem to be a little bit more extroverted. So I remember whenever I go to the US, or whenever the first time I went to the US, I felt a little bit intimidated. So what do you think? Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. I think that is the number one personality difference that I've noticed is Koreans definitely are a lot more shy just in general. And Americans, the norm is to be extroverted. Even if you're not extroverted, it's to be friendly, outgoing, to make small talk. I feel like most Koreans would pass out if they had to make small talk with each other because we talk to people even if we don't know them. I notice a lot of times if you're working in Korea, sometimes coworkers, unless they are close to each other, they know each other, they don't just make small talk. But in America, you kind of are expected to make small talk with everyone. All of your coworkers, your taxi driver, your waiter if you're at a restaurant, just everyone.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed in the US was whenever I'm being served at the restaurant, they will introduce themselves with names, or whenever you talk to a stranger, you would talk about things and then suddenly a minute in or 30 seconds into the conversation, somebody will say, "Oh, hi, I'm Ben, by the way." Whereas in Korea, we don't talk to strangers. Do you know why we don't talk to strangers?
I saw a TikTok one time. Some guy said something, you're more skeptical of people or strangers.
Yeah.
I feel like people will think Americans are nicer. They're super nice. But honestly, it's kind of like a fake nice. It's like you're expected to be nice.
Oh my goodness, that's so true. Yeah. Whenever I went to the US, I was like, why are you so nice to me?
Yeah. The waiters who are talking to everyone, it's usually because they're working for tips. Oh. So it's kind of like if you're not being overly nice to people, they just assume that you're being rude. So you kind of have to overcompensate it. But do you know what is the reason that Koreans are more shy?
You are absolutely right. It's because Koreans tend to be skeptical of talking to strangers, especially on the street. And there's a reason, because whenever we are approached by strangers, they want something, or they are scammers, or they want to take you somewhere. Usually they have flyers, or they have little gifts. It's very common for ajummas. Actually, they won't really approach foreigners. They will only approach middle-aged women who think they can afford an apartment, because they take them somewhere else, and then they show them around the apartment or real estate, and then etc. So that's that. And then another one is the cult.
Oh my gosh, definitely. That's the only time I've ever been. I feel like I'm used to Korea now, where if someone does approach me on the street, I know it's for a weird reason. It could be a cult, or it could be just a weird dude trying to get something out of me. Here, it changes your perception of talking to strangers. It almost seems like a red flag.
Yeah,
when someone
absolutely.
Talks to you.
Yeah. It's definitely a weird vibe. So even if you go on a lift or an elevator, we just don't talk. Or you would consider the other person to be a bit of a creep if they start making a conversation. So it's a very different perception. Whereas in the US, I think in the UK too. No, actually, in the UK, people don't really talk much to the strangers either.
It's a very American thing.
It's definitely an American thing, yeah.
Even here, I've noticed, I live in an apartment building. I never talk to my neighbors. It's a very rare occurrence that we talk. But in America, not so much apartments, but if you live in the house, you're supposed to know all your neighbors. You invite them over, you knock on their door, stuff like that.
Although I want to say that once you become an ajumma, or ajashi, especially ajumma, so women, Korean women after the age of 50s, or they're married with kids, and they're a lot more mature, they tend to be more talkative, and they actually will talk to strangers, or they would actually talk to themselves. wanting to engage into a conversation. This happens a lot in like public baths. This happens to me all the time, where older ladies, they are next to me and they are kind of saying like, oh, it's hot, and you know, they're talking to themselves, but they're actually talking to me. That thing happens a lot.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah,
so with age, they just become more outgoing.
Yeah. I think they just become, I don't want to say shameless, but I just think they just don't care much anymore. Like they don't care about others' judgment, and they just want to have fun, and they just want to engage in conversations and things like that. Whereas in the people in the 20s, they're like rigorously pressing that close button on the on the left.
I think I have had more interactions with older people like that. It's usually the older coworkers who talk to me first. The younger ones who are around my age, unless I know them, they're just on their phone. They don't want to talk to anyone. They're like, don't perceive me.
Exactly. So there's another gap. Like really, really older ladies or men, like grandpas, they will stare at foreigners because they're just not used to seeing a lot of like blondes and different ethnicity. But ajashis in their like 50s and 60s, I've heard from other English teacher, he said actually older generations, they are a lot nicer, a lot more friendlier than the younger ones.
Definitely, if you're a foreigner, people here do stare at you, and like they'll stare at you and not necessarily even say anything. It's a weird thing because in America, if you catch someone staring at you, they'll usually quickly look away. They act like they weren't staring at you. But here, if I'm on a bus or a subway, if an older person stares at me, I'll look at them staring at me, and then they just continue staring at me. I know it's curiosity. I know it's not so much judgment most of the time.
I mean, they're judging everything in their head, but you know, it doesn't really matter. But like, you know, a lot of people actually commented on it, and I thought about it, and whenever I actually go abroad, I think a lot of maybe some Asians might agree that actually women, I get stared at a lot when I'm abroad as well. I notice that a lot, and nothing in Korea. So I think it's definitely, it does happen depending on, you know, how exotic you are in that country, I guess. I once went to Africa, Rwanda, for a school charity, and you know, all the kids, everyone was literally just staring at me like that. So I mean, but I wasn't offended.
When you're a minority, I think anywhere you're gonna stick out, and you're pretty too, so I feel like that also is a reason.
Yeah, I don't mind being stared at. Like you can look.
Kind of like you can be the main character. Something else I have noticed is that I think Americans smile more often. In America, you kind of smile at strangers, or if you walk past them on the street, if it's just you two, you're kind of supposed to be like, oh hi, and if you make eye contact, you're kind of expected to smile. It's like an awkward thing, but here it's like if you smile at strangers, they're gonna think that you're a serial killer.
Or you're flirting, or
here I've been in so many awkward situations where I'm just trying to be friendly, making small talk, smiling at someone, and they take that as I'm flirting or interested or something, and I'm like, what? No.
I think for the male part, I can definitely understand why they might think that they might have that misunderstanding, because the behavior, like you said, American girls or Western girls, they tend to be very, very friendly. They are very responsive. And, you know, like you have no intention of engaging with them romantically or anything, but because you're so nice. And I guess Korean girls, if they are not as interested, I think they give off that kind of vibe. But I think also Korean men notice that from a Korean woman, but they don't notice it as much from the Western girls, because the behavior and the culture is obviously very different. So for example, like smiling. If you smile at a guy just randomly, they'll definitely think like, she likes me.
That's so funny. Something else I have noticed is even little things here, when you take a subway or you take a bus, it's kind of common courtesy or this unspoken rule that you're not supposed to talk to each other. But back home, people, I guess, kind of do the same thing. But if you take a subway in New York, people will be on there like singing and dancing, trying to make money. And you can kind of be talkative. You can be a little louder in places, and it's normal. But here, I feel like people are just quieter in general.
You're supposed to be quiet. You're supposed to be quiet. You're not supposed to really talk loud on the phone. If you do talk loudly, then people will stare at you, and people will think you are being rude. And you're not really supposed to eat as well in public transportation. And everyone will be staring at their phones and stuff. But sometimes there are people who do come into the coaches and the carriage and sell things, or ask for money, etc. But it's usually very quiet, very clean, Yeah, and no rats.
Definitely Latin.
No rats.
Yeah, no rats. When I went home to the US back in January and I went to New York and I was on the subway and it smelled like pee. There were rats and I was like, Korea would never.
I think we would freak out. So Jess, what else have you noticed? Have you noticed any differences between the American culture and the Korean culture in terms of personality and behavior differences?
I'd say another really big one that I've noticed is Korean culture tends to be very focused on respecting the community as a whole, but American culture, we're raised to be a little bit more self-centered when it comes to respect. Obviously, we want to respect the community as a whole too, but it's not as emphasized as it is in Korea. I think you could see this especially during COVID. In Korea, everyone immediately just put on a mask. They were just like, okay, we're going to protect ourselves, protect each other. But in America, it was like fighting against wearing a mask. Like, I just care about myself. Definitely a lot of that.
In Korea, during COVID, you had to write your personal details anywhere you enter. I think this, you wouldn't really see this happening in the US or the UK. I mean, in the UK, I remember they kind of encourage you to give your information by QR code, but nobody did it. But in Korea, if you don't write your phone number, if you don't do the QR code, you're just not simply let in. That's very different, I think, and everyone wearing masks. But then people got tired of it because the rules kept changing and everything.
When I first came to Korea, it was the start of 2021, so it was still really in that peak COVID era, I guess.
Yeah.
And I remember that you had to have the Kakao QR code when you go into a store or a cafe or leave your name and number. That would never fly if they tried to do that in the US. I would definitely be really upset about that.
I think it's mainly the difference between collectivism versus individualism, and this actually shapes around the whole culture, and that's what makes the difference within the cultural behavior between the West and East or South Korea. This can be often seen in restaurants as well. Like in the restaurant, usually per table there's only one menu, and people don't really order what they want. They don't really say what they want straight away. They kind of have the discussion about, what do we want? And usually if you go to a restaurant with your work, we all order one menu so that it's just convenient for everybody. Whereas in the US, it'd be more like, I want this dish and I don't want this.
I noticed that even just with when you eat, it's all like family style. You all share the same. You order food and you all eat it together. You share it. Yeah. But in the US, you order your own individual meal. Yeah. And you typically don't share it.
I remember I went to the US and I've ordered some food and I kind of offered it to everybody. And somebody next to me was like, but that's your food.
Because then they're like, well, then I have to offer my food.
Yeah. And another thing is, once we go into a restaurant, it's polite to do something for the other person. So this is what I've noticed. This is just a difference. It's not a particular community is rude or not. But whenever we sit down, one person would pour the water, not to themselves, but to the other person as well, and then the other person might lay the cutlery, give knives and forks, whereas in the West you would just get your own.
In the US, I think there's table manners, but it's not to that extent. You really wouldn't see that.
Yeah, or if there's an empty side dish, even if you don't want it, if it's empty, then if you notice it, and if you're the youngest of that table, you should get up and go get more. Because a lot of it is self-service, right?
And it's like an age thing, right? Isn't the youngest the one who's supposed to pour the drinks?
Pour the drinks, grill the meat, and do everything. But not pay. Yeah. Usually the older person pays.
I have noticed that. I guess at that point, maybe it's fair. She does all the work and the other one pays for it.
One thing I've noticed that was amazing in the US was that when we pay, because in Korea, usually one person just pays for everybody, or if we're paying for ourselves, one person would still pay for everything, and we would just, I think you use Venmo or something in the US.
Venmo,
yeah. Or we would say at the counter how much we want to pay. Like we'll do the calculation ourselves and tell the counter. In the US, the waiter not only divides it, but they know exactly what you've had, and they will calculate
they do it for you.
For like a couple. So if you're a couple, they would just give you the bill for that couple, and then the other one, and then the other person. They just do everything, and I was just like, whoa, you have to be good at maths. if you want to.
Usually the waiter will come over to you because they're working for tips. So they'll do any math for you or whatever. Because we have tipping culture in the US.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the bill, it'll also say how much the tip is. So then you can factor that. It'll be like, if you want to tip 15% or 20%, this is how much you would pay.
Oh, yeah. And I think this would be very informative for any Koreans or any non-Americans to know what is the standardized tipping thing. Because in the UK, we don't really tip, but 10% is like the standard. But I heard like if you tip 10% in the US, you're like insulting them.
Exactly. Yeah. In the US, you can tip however much you want. There's no law against it, but you're always expected to tip. And usually the standard is 20%. If it's bad service, you can tip less than that. If it's good service, you can tip more than 20%. But I guess it depends on the person, but I think I've always tipped at least 20% every single time. Even if the service was terrible, I give them 20% because a lot of people who work at restaurants in the US, they make a very, very low hourly rate because their money is mainly supposed to come from tips. And it's not usually just them who makes it. They split it with the other waiters and the people who work in the kitchen.
Wow.
So usually I just always give them 20% is like a safe bet.
Yeah.
If it's horrible service, like if they spit in your food, they yelled at you, they insulted you or something, then you should give them less.
I don't think the tipping culture will ever work in Korea because we'd be like, well, include it in the price. I don't know. As a Korean living in the UK and somebody who's never tipped before, we just pay for what we see. Even in supermarkets. So when I first went to the US, I'd look at something and I think, oh yeah, this is how much, and I have however much cash I have, and then at the counter, it's actually a lot more, and it's a tax added.
I still don't get it.
Yeah,
half the time.
I do think in some of the restaurants, like barbecue restaurants in Korea, staffs who work there, because the minimum pay is about just under $10, I think. And they do everything for you, grill, and they turn the meat, and they really provide great service, but they don't get tips. And some ajasis and some people who are in the middle age, they do kind of give cash, but that's not like a standard thing. But yeah, when I went to the US, I went to a coffee shop and they would just take the order and they were literally in the little like tablet.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
In the iPad, would it be like, oh, it's 20%? Even Americans think that is a new thing. You can go to like McDonald's and then they'll turn the thing around and be like, okay, do you want to tip 20%? If they're just doing that kind of thing, they're not actually waiting on you. I think it's a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a reason for it, but that's a new thing.
I just feel so bad for saying no. So I've learned that you should press custom if you want.
Yeah, I don't think you have to tip 20%. If they're just taking your order, then you can get by without leaving a tip or whatever. But it's so awkward because they're like staring at you and it's right in front of your face. So I feel obligated. But it's weird.
Yeah. But I can definitely see, because that's like the norm in the US, the tipping culture. People from Asia going abroad or traveling to the US, I guess the people in the US might feel that Asian people can be rude because as a traveler, we're kind of used to our own culture doing the same thing in the different country. I can imagine there being some cultural clash there.
I see what you did there. Culture clash.
Clash, yeah.
Yeah, it's just a cultural thing. If I would see foreigners in the US from anywhere, if anyone does anything rude, you have to take into account is probably just something in their culture that's different. Like here, the way you have to shout at a waiter, in America, if you do that, it's definitely considered rude. But here, if you don't shout at your waiter, they're never going to come to your table.
Oh.
It's so awkward for an American because when you're at a restaurant in the US, the waiter just constantly comes to your table. It's like, oh, is everything okay? Do you guys need more water? Whatever. But here, you have to yell, "저기요," across the whole restaurant.
Not only that, as soon as you say "저기요," you're supposed to point. If you want more water, you hold the bottle up and then you point at it so that they know what you want. So they can bring it to you.
It's so awkward. I love the places that have the little button.
Oh, yeah, the bell. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so much better.
Or any of the stores, especially convenience stores, or any grocery stores in the UK, when you're paying, small talk is more common, like, hey, how are you doing, etc., etc. In the US, of course. In Korea, we don't even greet each other. You can just go and pay and leave without having to speak or do anything.
I used to work in retail when I was in the US. So when you work in a clothing store, when someone walks in, you're immediately supposed to give them customer service. Like, hi, how are you? Where are you from? What are you shopping for? What size do you wear? What size do you like? But here, I don't even think I've ever interacted with anyone who works in a clothing store except for the person at the register do their own thing.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I kind of enjoy being left alone, but very different in that sense.
I remember going into like Bath and Body Works, and then one of the staff there was asking me, and then I said, oh, I'm just browsing, I'm just looking around, and she said, oh, that's absolutely fine, and she started talking about what's new.
I think a lot of those people, they make commission, so it's kind of like a tip, but they get extra money. Like if you make a sale and it's under your name, then you get a little extra money or whatever.
Oh yeah, that was another thing. When you pay, you're supposed to tell them who helped you, giving
like,
a name.
Jessica got me a fitting room, something like that.
Next, we're going to talk about 눈치. I'm sure living in Korea for, how long have you been living in Korea for?
About 2.5 years.
Are you familiar with the term 눈치?
I am now. It took me a while to understand it when I first came here. Okay, 눈치, I describe it as kind of like emotional intelligence, where you can read the room.
Yes.
And we do have that in the US, but it's not nearly to the extent that they have it here. And when I first moved here, being an American, I speak loudly compared to a lot of Koreans. So I think my 눈치 was very poor, because I would interact with like a coworker who I didn't know very well, and I'd be asking them like, oh, what did you do this weekend? Do you have kids? What's your favorite color? Stuff like that. And now looking back, they probably didn't want to talk to me. I should have read the room. If no one's talking, that doesn't mean I should start talking.
Where we say we have 눈치, or we say someone does have 눈치, or someone doesn't have 눈치. 눈치 있다, 없다. I can describe an incident for you. So I used to work at an international school, and I was dating. My ex-boyfriend used to come to visit because he was in the UK, and then he just visited me, and we went to school, and I wanted to leave the school as soon as possible. And obviously working in an environment in an Asian or Korean culture, you can't really say, oh, I'm gonna go now because I want to. You kind of have to make up an excuse, because if your boss hasn't left, you're not supposed to leave, and you're supposed to stay until they leave, even though you've done all your work. So I was kind of like to my ex, oh, so yeah, we have plans with my grandparents, remember? And then I kind of like winked at him, and he was like, what? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that with your eye? And I was just like, oh my God.
He didn't understand the 눈치.
Yeah. The drive back wasn't very pleasant for him.
Nunchi would have just understood and been like, okay, I see what you're saying. And
Yeah.
played along with it.
Yeah, I think that's more of a thing, because the social communication in Korea, I think a lot of people, or the culture in the West, you are very honest. So if you are sick, you say you're sick. If you want to do something, you say you want to do something. If you want to eat something, you just say it honestly, because, your opinion, your preference is valued and appreciated. Whereas in Korea, we obviously put our elderly or our boss first, or the community first, like we talked about earlier. So we kind of, if we want to do something that seems a bit selfish, or that's not good for the entire community, we kind of come up with some sort of an excuse, and sometimes people do lie about it. So that was one incident. I didn't want to say, I want to leave. We're supposed to have a meal with grandparents, and then my ex was like, yeah, we do. When? God. Why are you winking?
I think nunchi is definitely, even little things that I've noticed at work, like if Koreans will say, oh, we have a meeting, you don't have to be there if you don't want to be there. It's optional. They kind of still expect you to go. It's kind of like reading between the lines. A lot of times I feel like Koreans, they'll be super blunt in certain ways, but then in other ways they'll be super like saving face, beat around the bush, not saying exactly what they mean, and I'm left to infer what they're trying to say. I think you get better with it with practice though. So I think now my nunchi's pretty good. I feel like I'm psychic. When I first moved here, I thought Koreans were all psychic. Like, how can they tell that I'm thinking a certain thing or feeling a certain way?
Yeah. That's what a lot of new teachers who come to Korea to teach, they have issues, especially in academies, because Korean bosses, they're not supposed to. They want you to do extra work that they don't ask you to do. And then obviously coming from America, if you want something, say it. But obviously in Korean, managers or whoever is telling you to do something, they hope that you would understand and you would just do it out of your own will.
They want you to come up with the idea.
Yeah. But I don't think that's good. I think being direct is way, way better. Yeah, and then some people can just be blunt.
It's so polarizing. It's one or the other. But like I've had Koreans ask me to do things or invite me to hangouts or weddings, whatever. And it's kind of in an awkward way where it's just like, oh, I'm getting married. You can come if you want to come. If you don't want to come, you don't have to come. But if you want to come, here's your invitation. But like, don't feel like you have to come. Actually, don't come. But if you want to come, and I'm like, what? So am I invited or not?
Yeah. But
like
that means
very awkward.
But that means that they want you to come, right? We should talk about the wedding culture because that's so different, but we can save it for another time.
So something else I've noticed, when you first meet Koreans, they'll ask you basic questions like, how old are you? Stuff like that. But then something that I have noticed here is they will ask you what your MBTI is. And back home, I know what MBTI is, but it's not part of their daily lives. Here, everyone wants to know each other's MBTI.
Yeah.
They will base how they feel about you or your personality. They think it's Bible.
Yeah.
They really believe MBTI is a thing. So do you want to elaborate on what MBTI is for people who don't know?
Yeah, so there are two types of people, Koreans who really, really believe in the MBTI and saying that MBTI is science. MBTI is Myers-Briggs personality test, and it is actually science, obviously, because it was a study. And then other Koreans who are like, you can't really judge everyone. MBTI is just rubbish, that sort of thing. I am in the former side. I think it does help define someone and explain someone's preference and what they prefer to do and what they're like. So do you know much about the each letters, or shall I?
I know the main one, I and E. So I is introvert, E is extrovert, but I don't know too much about, I know it's like intuitive, judging. So my MBTI is an INFP-T. But I don't really know. I think it just means I'm very emotional.
You're right, INFP. So you are an introvert. So introvert versus extrovert. So I versus E. It doesn't mean that you're not outgoing or you're outgoing because you like people. But that means where you store your energy from. So for example, I'm an extrovert. I restore my energy whenever I meet up with friends. Afterwards, I feel energized. I am so happy. I want to hang out more. Whereas introverts, they really enjoy the time, but as soon as they get home, they really, really like being alone and things like that. And that's apparently the difference. And then the N versus S. Intuition is the N, and then sensing is S. And yeah, this is quite more difficult to define which is which, but intuition, they tend to imagine things a bit more. Or, when they're walking around the street, they always think about something, or what if? Is what a lot of people with intuition do. So they look at more of the possibility, whereas sensing people, S like to think and see what they see. So, for example, they like to base their opinions or base their decisions on their experiences or actual facts. So if you ask people with S questions like, oh, would you rather die doing this or doing that? And the typical answer would be like, but I'm not going to die. That's not possible. So why are you even asking that? Yeah. Whereas the N people will be like, what are the conditions? What am I doing there? How am I feeling? Or, is my pet there? Things like that. You would really try to think it's
more in depth about it.
So that's N versus. So you're the former. You would really imagine and you would really want to think about all the conditions. Is that what you are? Would you say you are?
Oh yeah, I think I'm very in my head, overanalyzing everything. I don't really make logical decisions. I mean, that sounds not completely illogical, but definitely not as mathematical.
Yeah. As people are more mathematical, I think. And then there's the easy F, feeling versus T. T is thinking. So T people tend to be more, I don't want to say logical, but F people tend to have more empathy. As in, they are very emotional. They cry a lot, I guess. I'm an F. I'm an extreme F.
Oh, yeah.
So we're both F.
Emo.
Yeah.
Very emo. You're an ENFP, right?
I'm an ENFP, and I'm supposed to be a very good match with you.
Similar.
Yeah,
exactly. We're very similar.
And then the last one, P versus J. So I'm an extreme E and then an extreme P. So F and T, when I actually do my work and my business, I become more of a T side. Whenever I am with my friends, I become more of an F. So I'm a bit more F, but still T. It depends on the situation. But P and J, P is for people who are spontaneous and they like to adapt to things and they just like to go with the flow. Tomorrow will solve the issue. Whereas J, judging people, they like to organize everything. They love the Excel sheets. They like to plan things. They are the people who like to plan A, B, C, D if they are traveling. So actually, my best match would be somebody who like to organize or plan all things, because I'm sure you are too. We just like to go along with the plans, right? So
yeah. I love to follow.
Yeah, I love to follow too.
I guess it's important if like you're dating. Would you want someone with like opposite letters then, or because I don't know if that would also cause issues if someone was super opposite of your personality. But maybe it's good like for an INFP, I should find an ES. Wait, what are the other ones?
ESTJ. So there's a lot of like analysis about MBTIs, and I've actually looked into a lot of it. So I'm basically an MBTI expert. So for me as an ENFP, introverts are usually a better match, and I agree with that. Apparently the intuition, the N versus S, apparently I would get on a lot better with somebody who also shares the value of the N.
So you can like connect on
emotional, like, mental level. And I think for you it would be the same. So if you wanted to talk about like, oh, what if we blah blah blah, and then your partner says, well, that's not happening, like what are you talking about?
Being able to talk like that, for sure.
And then F, I think I would prefer somebody who is more of a T side, logical side. So whenever I'm really upset, I want that support. And I really like people who give me solutions rather than feeling bad about it with me. So I think it depends on the person, but for me, yes. So apparently ENFP's best matches are either INFJs or INTJs. But I don't believe when somebody says, oh, I'm an INFJ, so we must be a perfect match, because I've been hurt by some of the INFJs. They are the worst guys ever.
Are they just emotional maybe?
Yeah, and I think INFJs tend to be really nice, they're really kind. And I'm not talking about girls, I love INFJ girls. And I guess INFJ guys, if they're like really into you and if they're like really genuine, but if, you know, everyone's a little bit different in terms of what their intentions are. And I think they can be a bit two-faced. So they don't want to say anything. They won't be honest. They won't say things to your face because they will feel so bad. They'll feel too guilty. And then afterwards, they will either like ghost you or they will just shut the door straight away, that sort of thing. FJs, there's a lot of blogs about it. Door shutting people, INFJs.
I'm gonna have to look into this now. Anytime I go to date a guy, I'm gonna have to ask him his MBTI right away.
Yeah.
Like, how are we gonna handle fighting?
A lot of my best friends are INTPs. They tend to be more direct. They're the ones that are like, Marianne, stop it.
It's good to have that opposite. It's like a balance.
Yeah. But in the US, it's astrology, isn't it?
Yeah, which has, I mean, some people might say that there's like scientific backing. I like to believe that there is, but I think MBTI is probably a little bit more accurate than astrology. But yeah, we go by astrology. Most people watching have probably heard of astrology. So they believe that depending on your birthday, that says a lot about your personality. And it's not just like your birth month, because you have your sun sign. I was born in September, so I'm a Virgo. But depending on the birth time and birth city, that will tell you your moon sign, your rising sign. Every planet means something different. And I like to believe in this stuff. I think it's kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie though, if I like a guy, I still try to figure out his sign. Put it in a calculator. I'm like, okay, are we gonna get married? Nope. Okay, on to the next.
You know what? It's not really to compare with MBTI, but astrology, we have a very, very similar thing called 사주.
Really?
Have you heard of it? 사주?
No. Oh my gosh, I need to know.
That's like the fortune telling. So palm reading is one thing, but Saju is you're born at a certain time and your name, and they take into an account of your parents, date of birth and stuff, and you are presented with 5 different energy. There's fire, there's wood, like trees, and there's land, there's water. A lot of Chinese letters are involved in this, and then the last one is gold. So each person have their own energy. Mine's fire, and I don't have a lot of wood or land. So in my Saju, in my fortune, I will not settle a lot, which means I'll be traveling a lot, which is absolutely true because I've been abroad, I've been out of my home. Like I went to the UK by myself to study. So that was absolutely true.
That sounds very similar to astrology.
Yeah. There's an app. I mean, they haven't paid me or anything. There's an app called Forceteller. They provide both Saju and the Western astrology. So you can put in, and it's free as well. You have to watch some ads. In Korea, we used to have astrology. I mean, not as in depth as in it is now in the West, but astrology and blood type. Some people still talk about, oh, I am this because I'm a blood type, whatever. I recently went to a hairdresser's and he was saying how shy he is because he's a blood type A.
When I first came here, some people asked me my blood type. And I didn't even know what my blood type was, which I guess is probably healthy to know. But back home, a lot of people probably do know what it is, but they don't think that there's any personality or like fortune, anything that goes along with it. But here, I heard that each one means a different personality. So I didn't know my blood type, but I wanted to know because people kept asking me. So I went on Coupang and I ordered one of those little like blood type tests. So I got it in the mail and it took me like 2 hours to prick my finger because I was so scared. But I found out I'm an AB, which apparently is the worst.
Psycho. You're a psycho.
I rather like you're either a psycho or you're a genius. What do the blood types mean?
So A means you're shy and you hold a grudge. And type B, if you're a guy, you're a player. Blood type O is the purest, that's what I am, and very outgoing. When I was in elementary school, as children would say we would only share water bottles with the person who's the same blood type as you. So we'd be asking, what blood type are you? Oh, I'm an O, so I can drink anybody's. And AB obviously like a genius or a psycho. And there's also a match, like blood type O girl is best matched with blood type whatever. And
I wonder if that's also like a scientific thing too. I don't want to get super scientific, but I think like if you have children with someone, there's certain blood types that are more compatible and other blood types might cause issues. I could be wrong. Someone in the comments correct me, please. I don't want to spread misinformation.
I think a lot of Western people don't know their blood type. I know in the UK, not many people know their own blood type. I remember, I keep bringing up my ex, but my ex used to be British, and I was asking, because in Korea, we take blood types very seriously, and in the back of the cars, some people will order the stickers to put at the back and say, if we are in danger, save our babies first, and our baby's blood type is whatever.
Oh, that's actually good though.
And then I was like, well, it's important for that sort of purpose. If you're having an emergency,
you want to know your blood
type.
type.
And then somebody is trying to help you, but they don't know your blood type. And then he was like, well, if it's really an emergency, they wouldn't just give you blood based on your own words. They will actually do like a proper test and everything. I guess you're right, whatever. Koreans definitely know their own blood type and MBTI. Cool. I think that's all we have to say for today.
Yeah, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll answer them in the next video. You can follow us on Instagram at Culture Clash Podcast and on YouTube at Culture Clash East Meets West.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
안녕.
안녕.